The headquarters of the second research group stood inside a scientific research park on the northern side of the city. From the outside, it did not look like a secret institution. Glass curtain walls, white exterior panels, quiet green walkways. There was even a sign at the entrance for a certain bioinformatics research center. If someone did not know the truth, they would never imagine that this place held massive amounts of divine domain-era synchronization data, player dream muttering records, correction templates, anxiety-soothing audio, outsourced annotation logs, and high-risk protocol samples. When Yichuan returned to headquarters, the sky had already gone completely dark. The two field operatives Chen Shu had sent followed behind him. Under ordinary rules, the third field team was not supposed to enter the second research group's core data area directly. But today was different. The abandoned mall incident, the live-stream warehouse incident, and the short video contamination had all proven that the second research group's data had already become raw material for Luo Wence's real-world military orders. If headquarters still treated this as nothing more than an internal data leak, they would be too slow. Yichuan swiped his card at the entrance. The access panel lit up once. The door did not open. He frowned slightly. He swiped again. It still did not open. The security guard beside the door glanced at him, looking awkward. Deputy Director your access to the core data area has been temporarily frozen. Yichuan's gaze darkened. Who ordered it? The guard lowered his voice. The director's office. The two field operatives exchanged a look and immediately synchronized the matter to Chen Shu. At the Su family clubhouse, Lin Yao was not surprised when he heard the news. Xin Wan, however, gave a cold laugh. They moved fast. Yi Jiwei's face looked ugly. Freezing deputy director his access means they don't want him checking the data flow. Chen Shu's voice came through the communicator. Yichuan, don't force your way in. Yichuan stood before the access gate, his expression calm. I won't force my way in. He turned and walked toward the director's office. The two field operatives followed. The director's office was on the 6th floor. Along the way, Yichuan passed quite a few researchers. None of the looks they gave him felt natural. Some avoided him. Some lowered their heads. Some showed obvious dissatisfaction. The fact that the source of the short video contamination came from the second research group's database had already spread internally. But headquarters' first reaction had not been to open itself to inspection. It had been to cut off access. That meant the inside had already begun to split. Meng Hong's office door was half open. Yichuan knocked once, then walked straight in. Meng Hong sat behind his desk, a stack of printed reports placed before him. He raised his head to look at Yichuan, then at the two field operatives behind him. You brought field operatives into headquarters? Yichuan answered, the database leak has already caused real-world military order contamination. This is no longer only an internal research group matter. Meng Hong said coldly, so you bring outside safety personnel into the core data area? I haven't entered yet. Because you froze my access. Meng Hong put down his pen. At the joint meeting, you openly admitted that this group's processes were insufficient. Without authorization from the director, you supported a trial run of a non-standard name settling procedure. Now you want to bring field operatives in to investigate the database. Yichuan, do you know what you're doing? Yichuan pushed up his glasses. I do. I am preventing the second research group from being dragged by Luo Wence into becoming an accomplice to real-world military orders. The office instantly went silent. Meng Hong's eyes turned cold to the extreme. Watch your words. Yichuan did not step back. Science.com Beta 07 has already leaked. It was modified into a short video correction contamination audio source. If other test audio, dream muttering fragments, and correction templates leak as well, the consequences will be 10 times worse than the abandoned mall. Director, locking down the database now is not protecting headquarters. It is giving Luo Wence time. Meng Hong was silent for several seconds. How are you certain that audio source did not leak after your people contacted it on site? He Chuan gave a brief laugh. Because the timeline doesn't match. He placed the comparison report Yi Jiwei had sent him onto the desk. The short video contamination was posted before we extracted the audio fingerprint. The source account uploaded it even earlier. And the most recent access to that audio source happened 7 days ago. Meng Hong's expression shifted slightly. Who accessed it? He Chuan did not answer directly. That is why I need to enter the database. Meng Hong looked at him. You suspect someone inside headquarters helped Luo Wence. He Chuan said, I suspect data access management has already lost control. That phrase sounds better. But it means the same thing. Meng Hong stood and walked to the window. He remained silent for a long time. The two field operatives did not speak. On the other side of the communication line, Chen Shu, Lin Yao, Xin Wan, and Yi Jiwei were all listening. At last, Meng Hong said, I can restore your query permissions. He Chuan did not relax. Meng Hong continued, but the field operatives may not enter the core data room. He Chuan said, that won't work. They will not view the content. They will only witness the sealing process, access logs, permission changes, and data leak risk handling. Meng Hong said coldly, You moved Lin Yao's witness seat method into headquarters? He Chuan answered, yes. Because it works. At the other end of the communication line, the corner of Chen Shu's mouth moved slightly. Meng Hong turned and looked at He Chuan. You've changed. He Chuan said, the field has changed. Director, if the second research group continues treating all data as research assets instead of risk evidence, the next thing that leaks will not just be soothing audio. It may be the kind of language command used on Fang Zhiyan. It may be the dream muttering of failed correction subjects. It may be high-risk military order reaction material. Meng Hong's face finally changed for real. He could dislike the Obsidian process. He could suppress the concept of withdrawal. But he could not ignore that consequence. Because once the second research group's database was proven to be the core source of real-world military order contamination, the entire headquarters would be held accountable. In the end, he picked up the internal phone again. Restore Deputy Director He's data risk disposal permissions. Activate temporary sealing procedures for the core data room. Send the data security team to the site. He paused. 2 field operatives from the 3rd field team may observe the sealing process. They may not touch raw data. He Chuan nodded. That is enough. 10 minutes later, the second research group's core data room opened. There was no paper inside the data room. Only servers, cold light, surveillance cameras, and several pale-faced data security officers. He Chuan stood before the main console. The first thing he did was not investigate who had leaked the data. It was issue a sealing order. Freeze all external access to high synchronization anxiety-soothing audio. Freeze copy permissions for all correction language templates. Raise all original dream muttering audio to high-sensitive sealed status. Suspend downloads of all outsourced annotation data. Generate immutable snapshots of all access records from the past 30 days. The data security officer froze. Deputy Director this will affect many projects. He Chuan's tone was very cold. Then let it affect them. They are no longer ordinary data. They are materials Luo Wence may turn into real-world military orders. The 2 field operatives recorded everything simultaneously. Data sealing began. Large numbers of permissions were temporarily locked. At the same time, warning messages appeared across multiple internal projects in the second research group. Many researchers began complaining in the internal channel. Why are they suddenly sealing data? My model training is halfway done. If we can't access correction templates, how are we supposed to run today's test? Is this because of that Obsidian safety point? Has Deputy Director He lost his mind? Xinwan soon saw those messages as they were synchronized to her. She said coldly, "Looks like this touched quite a few people's interests." Lin Yao looked at the screenshots of the internal complaints. It also touched Luo Wence's food. Yi Jiwei nodded. He needs these datasets to combine new military orders. The faster we seal them, the fewer materials he can use. But when the database sealing had only reached the halfway point, a red warning suddenly appeared on the main console. External mirror synchronization in progress. He Chuan's expression changed. Which dataset? The data security officer rushed to check. Correction language template group B. Dream muttering annotation sample batch 7. High synchronization soothing audio beta group. And his voice stopped. He Chuan asked coldly, "And what?" B-series language reaction data. On the other side of the communication line, Lin Yao's eyes instantly turned cold. B-series. That data very likely included records from when Fang Zhiyan had once been used as a language contamination carrier. If Luo Wence obtained that batch of data, a stronger counter-command contamination might appear in reality. He Chuan immediately ordered, "Disconnect the external mirror." The data security officer's face turned white. Disconnecting, but the other side has an internal access token. Whose token? The data security officer checked, then froze completely. A deactivated account. Name, Zhou Mian. The man in the white shirt. The real-world gray-clothed lecturer from the abandoned mall. He had clearly already left the organization. But his account could still trigger an internal access token. He Chuan looked at the data security officer. Why does a former employee account still have mirror permissions? The data security officer could not answer. The two field operatives had already recorded the scene. This was not merely an outside intrusion. It was a failure of internal access management. It might even have been intentionally preserved by someone. He Chuan had no time to assign blame. Freeze all historical tokens belonging to Zhou Mian. Cut off the mirror endpoint. Generate a list of leaked data. Warnings flashed frantically across the main console. The mirror progress had already reached 76%. The data security officer was covered in sweat. Director-level confirmation is required. He Chuan turned directly toward Meng Hong. Meng Hong stood at the data room entrance, his face extremely ugly. At this moment, he could no longer say that He Chuan was overreacting. A deactivated account was still leaking data. And the leaking data happened to include exactly the materials needed for real-world contamination. This was ironclad evidence. Meng Hong gritted his teeth. Confirm. The main console executed a highest-level freeze. The mirror progress stopped at 83%. The external connection was severed. Everyone in the data room breathed out in relief. But Lin Yao did not. Because 83% was already too much. Xinwan asked in a low voice, "How much leaked?" He Chuan looked at the list, his voice heavy. Most of correction language template group B has leaked. Part of the high synchronization soothing audio beta group has leaked. About 60% of dream muttering annotation sample batch 7. B-series language reaction data. He paused. 30%. Lin Yao closed his eyes briefly. 30%. That was enough for Luo Wence to do many things. Especially if it included Fang Zhiyan's reaction samples. Yi Jiwei immediately said, I need to inspect the contents of the B-series language reaction data. Lin Yao said, only the summaries. Do not play the original audio. Yi Jiwei nodded. She remotely applied for de-risked search access. He Chuan approved it. Very quickly, she saw the data labels. B11. Language obedience reaction. B11. Anti-name settling stimulus. B11. Name awakening failure sample. B11. High-pressure command recovery test. Lin Yao's fists slowly clenched. The data labels alone already showed how Fang Zhiyan had been treated inside the second research group, or along Luo Wence's line. Not as a person. As a reaction sample. As an awakening failure. As a high-pressure test subject. If this data leaked, Luo Wence might be able to reverse-engineer contamination language aimed specifically at Fang Zhiyan and the name settling procedure. Just then, the metal box on the long table inside the Su family clubhouse suddenly vibrated. A system prompt appeared. Warning, B-series language reaction data has leaked. Related individual Fang Zhiyan may be affected by real-world counter-command contamination. Lin Yao raised his head sharply. Fang Zhiyan was inside the game. But the data leak had happened in reality. That meant Luo Wence might use real-world data to contaminate Fang Zhiyan inside the game in reverse, or affect Fang Zhiyan's corresponding real-world state. The name-settling reciter saved during the second season had now become a new attack target. Lin Yao did not hesitate. I'm logging in. Qin Wan stood immediately. Now. Now. Chen Shu's voice came through the communicator. You've been awake for 2 days. Lin Yao looked at the metal box. Fang Zhiyan may be in danger. You hold the safety point. Keep sealing the real-world database. I'm going back to Obsidian Town. He knew the third season's center of gravity was in reality. But the game and reality had already connected into one body. A real-world data leak could strike back at a game character. That was the truly terrifying part of Divine Domain era. The boundary was disappearing. And what Luo Wence was best at was attacking through the cracks in boundaries. When Lin Yao logged into Obsidian Town, the first thing he saw was the Battle Soul altar. The gray-white main flame was still burning. But the fire was weaker than when it had first been established. That was not strange. After the third season began, the Battle Soul altar had repeatedly supported reality. The abandoned mall. The Su family clubhouse. Remote name settling. Content protection. It was still only a newly established altar. It could not bear reality projections without limit. But what truly made Lin Yao's heart sink was the sound beside the altar. Someone was reciting in a low voice. Not a complete command. Only broken sentence after broken sentence. B11. Reaction unstable. Re-stimulate. Name awakening failed. High-pressure command recovery. Lin Yao strode quickly toward the side hall of the altar. Fang Zhiyan knelt on the ground, both hands clamped tightly around his throat. Zhan was beside him, holding his shoulders and calling his name again and again. Fang Zhiyan. Your name is Fang Zhiyan. Not B11. Bai Ji and Guan were using heart-clearing herb powder to suppress the voice-print contamination. Uncle Zhou held the roster, his face more grave than it had ever been. When Zhan saw Lin Yao come in, it was as if he had grasped a life-saving rope. Lord! Lin Yao crouched in front of Fang Zhiyan. Fang Zhiyan's eyes were open, but their focus was unstable. His lips trembled again and again. At times, he seemed about to recite the anti-command phrase for name settling. At times, another set of language pressed him down. Name, awakening, failed. B11. Reaction. No. I am not. Bai Zhi said urgently, it began suddenly just now. There is no outside enemy. No black tide invasion. It is as if his old data has been pulled again. Lin Yao confirmed it in his heart. The real-world database leak had indeed struck Fang Zhiyan in reverse. Luo Wence did not need to come near Obsidian Town. As long as he held data from the time Fang Zhiyan had been tested, stimulated, and failed to awaken, he could simulate the old wound at the rule level. This was more vicious than ordinary contamination. Because it was not an external attack. It was using an injury he had once suffered to wake that wound again. Lin Yao took out the nameless record and the responsibility register. Uncle Zhou, open Fang Zhiyan's personal page. Uncle Zhou immediately flipped it open. Fang Zhiyan. Former designation, B11. Status, name settling reciter, in training. Not B11. Once modified by language contamination commands. Anti-command short phrases established. When Fang Zhiyan heard B11, his body jerked violently. Lin Yao immediately said, do not say the designation again. Uncle Zhou stopped. Bai Zhi also realized it. In the past, they had written former designations into individual case files to make responsibility traceable. But now the designation itself had been contaminated again by Luo Wence. For Fang Zhiyan, repeatedly speaking B11 might not help him distinguish himself. It might stimulate the old wound. Lin Yao immediately ordered, layer the personal page. Do not display old designations in the name settling layer. Seal old designations in the responsibility layer. In the combat layer, display only Fang Zhiyan. Uncle Zhou's eyes lit up. This was the same logic as the temporary name data layering used by the real-world safety point. The same layer of data should not be exposed in every situation. Responsibility tracing needed to know B11. Name settling did not. Combat needed it even less. Uncle Zhou immediately reorganized the page. The name settling page kept only this. Fang Zhiyan. Name settling reciter. Can use anti-command short phrases. Current state, echo contamination. Stabilizing sentence, my name is Fang Zhiyan. I speak my own words. Lin Yao looked at Zhan. Only recite the stabilizing sentence. Zhan immediately leaned close to Fang Zhiyan's ear. Your name is Fang Zhiyan. You speak your own words. Fang Zhiyan's body trembled. My name. Then another echo pressed him down. Awakening failed, re-stimulate. Lin Yao frowned. This could not be solved with ordinary name awakening. What Luo Wence had leaked was test data. The data contained stimulus patterns from Fang Zhiyan's name settling failures. In other words, simply saying, your name is Fang Zhiyan, might be countered by the name awakening failure samples in the other side's database. They had to change methods. They could not wake him. They had to let him not be woken immediately. Lin Yao remembered the silent name area in reality. Some people could not keep listening to commands. Even too much name-settling recitation could become a stimulus. He immediately said, stop reciting. Zhan froze. But... Stop. Lin Yao's tone was steady. What he needs right now is not more sound. He needs to withdraw from sound. Bai Zhi immediately understood. The silent name method. Yes. Lin Yao made everyone stop reciting. The side hall of the altar quieted. Only Fang Zhiyan's broken breathing remained. Lin Yao took out a wooden tablet and wrote, "You may stay silent for now." He wrote a second tablet. "You are not a test result." A third. "You can wait for the voices to pass." A fourth. Fang Zhiyan. He placed the 4 wooden tablets in front of Fang Zhiyan. He did not read them aloud. He did not force him. He only let Fang Zhiyan look. Fang Zhiyan's gaze fell with great difficulty onto the first wooden tablet. "You may stay silent for now." His throat trembled even more violently. It was as if he had been continuously commanded to speak, and someone had finally permitted him not to speak. The echo weakened a little. Re-stimulate. He looked toward the second tablet. "You are not a test result." Tears rolled out of Fang Zhiyan's eyes. His fingers slowly loosened from his throat. Bai Zhi saw the contamination fluctuation decrease and whispered, "It works." Lin Yao took out the responsibility register again. This time, he did not read to Fang Zhiyan. He wrote into the register. B-series language reaction data leak has caused Fang Zhiyan's old trauma to trigger echo contamination. The responsibility does not lie with Fang Zhiyan. The data collectors, test designers, data custodians, leakers, and secondary users all require responsibility tracing. The responsibility register lit up. This entry was not treatment. It removed responsibility from Fang Zhiyan. For many victims, the most painful thing was not only being hurt. It was believing their uncontrolled reaction meant they themselves were not good enough. Fang Zhiyan was the same. He had once been terrified that his voice would hurt people again. Now that Luo Wence was pulling on him with old data, the easiest thing for him to believe was that he had become B11 again. Lin Yao had to write it clearly, the responsibility did not lie with Fang Zhiyan. After that sentence fell into the responsibility register, the echo in Fang Zhiyan's mouth weakened again. At last, he forced out one complete sentence. "I can stay silent." Zhan's eyes reddened. "You can. You can stay silent for now." Fang Zhiyan closed his eyes, and his whole body went limp. Bai Zhi immediately stepped forward to examine him. "He's temporarily stable. But he must not be exposed to sounds related to old B-series data again." Lin Yao nodded. "Establish an echo contamination category." Uncle Zhou immediately recorded it. Echo contamination. Definition: old trauma reactions that were once collected, tested, stimulated, and annotated are externally called up again, causing the subject's old state to echo. Handling: stop sound stimulation, use silent name wooden tablets, hide old designations by layer, and make clear that the responsibility does not lie with the subject. Taboos: repeatedly speaking old designations, asking about test details, demanding immediate proof of clarity. A system prompt appeared. New contamination category added to Obsidian Town, echo contamination. Silent name method strengthened. Name settling procedure corrected. Not every person who loses their name needs to be awakened. Some must first be allowed to remain silent. Lin Yao looked at the prompt, his heart heavy. This was an important correction. Name settling did not mean endlessly calling a name. Withdrawal did not mean endlessly asking what someone was withdrawing from. Healing did not mean endlessly digging into trauma. Sometimes, the most important thing was to stop the stimulus. Fang Zhiyan was sent into the silent name area to rest. Zhan stood guard outside. Bai Zhi arranged silent care. Anyone entering had to look at the wooden tablets first. Do not say old designations. Do not ask about testing. Do not demand speech. Lin Yao left the side hall and returned to the Battle Soul altar. The main flame swayed weakly. It seemed to have also borne the echo contamination just now. Lin Yao placed his hand on the side of the altar. "I'm sorry." The altar did not answer. But the gray-white fire steadied slightly. At that moment, Qinhuan's voice came through from the real-world communication line. "How is Fang Zhiyan?" Lin Yao answered, "Stable." Qinhuan clearly breathed out in relief. The database is still being sealed. But the 30% that leaked cannot be recovered. Lin Yao said, "Then build protection. We just corrected a new category. Echo contamination." He simplified the category and sent it back to reality. After Qinhuan read it, she was silent for a long time. "This doesn't apply only to the game." Lin Yao said, "Right." In reality, many people could suffer echo contamination because original dream muttering audio, test data, and psychological reactions were replayed. Especially those who had once been tested by the second research group. Lin Yao said, "Add it to the safety point process. When you encounter echo contamination, don't rush to awaken the person. First stop the stimulus, allow silence, and confirm that the responsibility does not lie with the subject." Qinhuan said quietly, "Understood." Lin Yao looked out over Obsidian Town. From the first season until now, he had always thought name settling meant finding a name back. But now he knew that name settling also included something finer. When a name itself had been tested, contaminated, and repeatedly failed, some people did not need to be woken immediately. They needed to withdraw from those voices first. This was the cost of Obsidian's rules growing. Every kind of person they saved required another rule. And every rule they corrected meant someone had once been hurt there. After the echo contamination category was established, Obsidian Town immediately began a full check. Uncle Zhou listed everyone who had ever been numbered, tested, contaminated, or controlled by commands. Fang Zhiyan was only the first to suffer an episode. He could not possibly be the only one. Zhou Mian, Xiong Jian, Jiang Bai. R04, whose temporary name was Stay. Temporary name holders like Grey Road and Stone Rain. Withdrawers from the Old Salt Road. The speechless people from the 30-person silent formation. Even He Jin and Lan Yuan, who were awaiting responsibility judgment or medical review, might be dragged back by their own old data and old actions. Uncle Zhou looked at the long list, his face heavy. "If we do a deep check on all of them, we don't have enough people." Lin Yao said, "Not a deep check. Mark risk first." Bai Shi continued, "Classify them by whether they were exposed to language stimulation, whether they had old designations, whether dream muttering data exists, and whether Luo Wence directly tested them." Uncle Zhou wrote down 4 levels. Echo high risk, previously subjected to language contamination, command control, repeated testing, and possible data leakage. Echo medium risk, previously numbered or corrected, but without an obvious language carrier. Echo low risk, previously exposed to the black tide or military orders, but not individually tested. Pending check, insufficient data. Fang Zhiyan was listed as high risk. Zhou Mian was medium risk leaning high. Xiong Jian was medium risk. Jiang Bai was high risk. R04, Stay, was high risk. Temporary name holders like Grey Road and Stone Rain were medium risk. Lan Yuan was medium risk. He Jin, still awaiting responsibility judgment, was listed as pending high risk because he held clues related to black accounts and Luo Wence's transaction line. As soon as that chart appeared, the workload of isolation shed 2 on the Black Tide Purification Office instantly increased. Not because everyone had already had an incident, but because everyone needed to be protected from being pulled again by old data. Lin Yao stood beside Uncle Zhou and looked at the classifications. Establish an echo roster. Uncle Joe looked up. A separate register? Yes. But not a public register. Only medical personnel, name-settling personnel, and responsibility handlers may use it. The name-settling layer must not display old wound details. Only the responsibility layer displays the source. Uncle Joe nodded. Understood. The echo roster was officially established. It was not meant to repeatedly tear open victims' wounds. It was meant to let caregivers know which words must not be touched, which sounds must not be played, which old names must not be spoken, and which data must not leak. In truth, it was the same as high-sensitive data sealing at the real-world safety point. Names had to be recorded. Wounds also had to be recorded. But not for everyone to see. They were recorded so no one would step on them again. Zhiyan voluntarily joined the organization of the echo roster. He understood better than most what it felt like to be dragged back into an old state by the black tide. He suggested an additional field. Usable stabilizing object. For Fang Zhiyan, the stabilizing objects were silent name wooden tablets, Zhiyan's companionship, and a soundless environment. For Zhou Mian, the stabilizing object might involve her younger sister, but it would need to be handled carefully. For Jiang Bai, the stabilizing objects were still able to state his own name and the withdrawal wooden tablet. For R04, stay, the stabilizing objects were the temporary name stay and the cleansing stop mark. Bai Ji strongly agreed. We can't only record what must not be touched. We also have to record what can help them come back. Lin Yao wrote that sentence onto the first page of the echo roster. The echo roster records not only taboos, but also return paths. Taboos were places they must not step. Return paths were the roads that could bring people back. A system prompt appeared. Obsidian Town has established echo roster. Function: records risks of old contamination echoes, name-settling taboos, and stabilizing return paths. Connected to silent name area, nameless record, responsibility register, battle soul altar. Effect: reduces secondary outbreaks of echo contamination. At the same time, the real-world Su Family Clubhouse also established a real-world echo chart based on what Lin Yao had sent back. Yi Jiwei was responsible for turning past test data into high-sensitive risk. Xinhuan was responsible for building a list of questions that could not be asked. Chen Shu was responsible for drafting field contact rules. For example, for people who had been pulled by correction notices, do not repeatedly ask them what content they received. For people pulled by short videos, do not ask them to replay the video. For temporary name holders, do not repeatedly ask, do you really not want to use your real name? For family members of missing synchronized persons, do not start by asking, did they leave willingly? These questions were not forbidden forever. They simply must not be asked at the first moment, in the wrong scene, while the person was in the wrong state. The echo roster gave name-settling personnel their first true list of questioning taboos. Xinhuan looked at the chart and said softly, in the past, we too often thought asking clearly meant helping. Lin Yao answered through the communicator. You ask clearly after someone is standing steady. When they cannot stand, a question is a push. Xinhuan wrote that sentence into the training notes for name-settling personnel. In the afternoon, Hechuan sent a new data sealing progress update from the second research group headquarters. The external mirror had been cut off. All old Zhou Qinan tokens had been frozen. 3 data security officers had their permissions suspended. The outsourced data annotation flow was fully stopped. But the bad news was that the data already leaked could not be fully traced. Especially the B-series language reaction data. Within the 30% that had leaked, part of it had already been split into small packets and transferred into anonymous storage nodes. Hechuan's voice was heavy. Luo Wence may already have enough content. Lin Yao asked, "Can we judge who we will attack next?" He Chuan was silent for a moment. From the data package labels, aside from Fang Zhiyan, there are B03, B07, and B09. Zhou Mian, Xiong Jian, Jiang Bai. Lin Yao's eyes chilled. He wants the B series to suffer echo contamination together. Very likely. But not necessarily all at once, He Chuan said. If I were him, I would choose the person most capable of damaging the obsidian process. Lin Yao immediately thought of Zhou Mian. Zhou Mian was now responsible for identifying recruitment rhetoric within Obsidian's safety system. She understood the process of being induced through one's weaknesses. If she was dragged by echo contamination back into the state of accepting a high-risk synchronization test for her sister's medical fees, then not only would she collapse, but the trust of family-entangled people and correction pressure consultants might also be shaken. Lin Yao immediately ordered, "Find Zhou Mian." Zhan went to look for her. Before long, he returned with his face changed. Zhou Mian isn't in isolation shed too. Where did she go? She saw a letter. It said her sister's medical data had been updated. Lin Yao's heart sank. Luo Wence's second strike had already arrived. Not sound. Not dream muttering. Her sister. He had used the weakness that first induced Zhou Mian and knocked open her echo again. How long ago? A quarter of an hour. Direction? The south gate. Lin Yao immediately moved. Zhao Tai hurried over too. "I'm coming with you." Fang Zhiyan was still resting in the silent name area and could not take part. Zhan had to stay and guard the echo roster. Bai Zhi had to stabilize the isolation shed. Lin Yao could only bring Zhao Tai, Shi Sheng, and Su Fang with him. Uncle Zhou quickly handed him Zhou Mian's echo page. Zhou Mian. Former designation, sealed in the responsibility layer. Induced weakness, younger sister's medical fees. Stabilizing path, real confirmation that her sister is still alive, non-blaming language, withdrawal remains valid. Taboos, why did you go back then? Were you willing? What would happen to your sister if you did not go? Lin Yao took it. This echo page might save her. It might also be too late. Outside Obsidian Town's south gate, a faint black line stretched into the wild. It was not the black tide. It was echo traction. Lin Yao looked at that line, his voice cold as ice. Luo Wence. You truly know how to find wounds. Zhao Tai tightened his grip on his blade. Then we cut off his hand. Lin Yao did not answer. He knew Luo Wence might not be present this time. Luo Wence had now learned to use data, memory, family, old wounds, and real-world notifications to pull people out of Obsidian Town. This was harder to defend against than a frontal attack. They followed the black line out. Less than a day after the Echo roster was established, its first true Echo rescue had begun. Zhou Mian did not walk quickly. But she walked very straight. On the wild road outside the south gate, she left a string of very shallow footprints. The footprints showed no trace of running. No struggle. No sign of being dragged. That was precisely why they were most dangerous. Because she had not been forcibly taken by an enemy. She was walking forward herself, inside some kind of echo. Shi Sheng crouched to examine the footprints. No second person. Zhao Tai frowned. She walked out by herself? Lin Yao looked at the black line ahead. Not by herself. She was drawn out by her old wound. Su Fang held the grain sack, his face a little pale. That's harder than being captured. He was right. If someone was captured, you could chase the enemy. If someone was drawn, You had to chase the most painful place in that person's heart. Zhou Mian's pain was her sister. Back then, the reason she had accepted the high-risk synchronization experiment was her sister's medical fees. Now Luo Wence was using updated medical data for your sister to lure her out, which meant he was pulling her back to that original choice point. If she once again believed that as long as she cooperated, she could save her sister, then the withdrawal and name settling that Obsidian Village had once built for her might be covered by the echo. After they chased for 2 li, Shang found a sheet of paper in the grass beside the road. The paper was folded very neatly. The words printed on it had a real-world style. But it had appeared inside the game. That alone proved it was a synchronization projection object. Lin Yao took the paper. The content was not long. Miss Zhou Mian. Your relative's medical synchronization data has been updated. If you are willing to reconfirm your high synchronization correction qualification, partial medical assistance channels may be restored. Your past withdrawal record may have caused the qualification to become invalid. Please complete confirmation before the designated time. After the deadline, the relevant benefits cannot be retained. Every sentence sounded like a real-world notice. There was no threat. No command. But every sentence was forcing her. Relative medical care. Qualification restoration. Withdrawal causing invalidation. Deadline benefits not retained. Luo Wence had already projected real-world correction rhetoric into the game. Lin Yao tightened his grip on the letter. Zhao Tai cursed. That bastard. Su Fang looked at the letter and could not help saying, words like this are more poisonous than a blade. Lin Yao placed the paper into an evidence sealing pouch. This is evidence. It is also an echo induction template. He wrote into the responsibility register. Luo Wence's line uses relative medical care, qualification restoration, withdrawal invalidation, and expiring benefits as echo induction. Target, Zhou Mian. Responsibility line, real-world correction rhetoric projected into the game. The responsibility register lit up. The direction of the black line also became a little clearer. They continued the chase. Ahead stood an abandoned relay shed. It did not belong to the old salt road, but to a small supply point at the edge of the Blackstone wasteland that had long since fallen out of use. The shed was half collapsed. Withered grass grew all around it. But there was light inside. Not firelight. Cold light, like a real-world screen. Lin Yao signaled for everyone to stop. Shang circled to the side first. Soon he returned and whispered, Zhou Mian is inside. There is also a figure. Zhao Tai gripped his blade. Luo Wence? Shang shook his head. Doesn't look like it. More like a projection. Lin Yao approached the relay shed and saw what was happening inside. Zhou Mian stood before the cold light. In front of her floated a real-world medical page. On the page were her sister's name, medical record number, treatment progress, and a red prompt. Assistance qualification pending confirmation. Please confirm whether to restore the correction process. Zhou Mian's hand hovered over the confirm button, and her whole body trembled. She was not unclear. She was very clear. And precisely because she was clear, she was suffering. Beside her stood a blurry figure. It was not Luo Wence. It was the projection of her younger sister. A little girl sat on a hospital bed, her face pale, looking at her. Sister. Do you not want me anymore? Zhou Mian instantly broke down. No. I don't. Lin Yao's eyes became cold to the extreme. This was not an ordinary disguise. It was using the image of Zhou Mian's sister to force her to choose again between withdrawing herself and saving her sister. Zhao Tai was so furious he nearly rushed out. Lin Yao raised a hand to stop him. They could not charge in recklessly. If they directly shattered the projection, Zhou Mian might believe they had destroyed her sister's assistance. They had to cut apart the rhetoric first. Lin Yao walked into the relay shed. Zhou Mian. Zhou Mian turned sharply. Her eyes were full of tears, and also a trace of defense. Don't come over. I'm only confirming it. I won't really correct. I just want to see whether her assistance can be restored. Lin Yao stopped 3 steps away from her. I won't touch you. And I won't stop you from looking. Zhou Mian froze. She had thought Lin Yao would immediately tell her not to press it. Lin Yao said, but first, let's look clearly at this sentence. He pointed at the page. Your withdrawal record may have caused the qualification to become invalid. It says may. Not already invalid. Zhou Mian's voice trembled. But what if it really is invalid? Lin Yao said, then we investigate who made it invalid. We do not make you correct again. Zhou Mian's gaze wavered. The projected sister immediately began to cry. Sister, it hurts. They said as long as you confirm it, it can continue. Zhou Mian clutched her ears in pain. Stop saying it. Lin Yao looked at the projection. You are not her sister. The projection raised its head, and its eyes suddenly became hollow. I am the person she most fears losing. The voice changed. It was no longer a little girl's voice. It was Luo Wence's voice. Zhao Tai growled, so it is you. The projection said faintly, Lin Yao, can you stop Zhou Mian? She genuinely wants to save her sister. This is not deception. This is her choice. Lin Yao said coldly, you turn the options into extortion, then call it a choice. The projection smiled. Many real-world choices are exactly like this. Medical fees. Qualifications. Insurance. Slots. Deadlines. Do you think only I do this? That sentence stung. Because part of it was true. In reality, many people already made choices within fear and qualifications. Luo Wence had only connected that pressure to the correction process. Lin Yao did not deny it. That is why it has to be dismantled. He opened the withdrawal contract register. Zhou Mian. You do not have to withdraw your responsibility toward your sister. But you can withdraw from a correction confirmation made under the threat of medical assistance. Zhou Mian looked at him. They can be separated? They can. Lin Yao said, you want to save your sister. That is true. You do not want to be corrected. That is also true. Luo Wence tied them together. What Obsidian has to do is untie them. Zhou Mian's tears kept falling. She looked toward the projected sister. But if I don't press? Lin Yao said, we investigate the assistance. We investigate the qualification. We investigate who tied it to correction. That is a responsibility line. It is not something you should carry alone. Su Fang immediately took out diversion wooden tablets from beside him. He placed one wooden tablet beside the page. Medical assistance. Then another. Correction confirmation. Then another. Responsibility investigation. The 3 wooden tablets separated the originally bound page into 3 parts. The withdrawal contract register lit up. The confirm button on the page began to flash. The original red text became 3 lines. Medical assistance status requires investigation. Correction confirmation may be paused. Withdrawal record causing qualification invalidation, insufficient basis. Zhou Mian seemed to have all the strength drawn out of her, and she sank to her knees. Maybe paused. I didn't make her lose it. Lin Yao said, no. At least right now, there is no evidence that you caused it. Luo Wence's projection looked coldly at the 3 wooden tablets. You are getting better and better at taking apart my language. Lin Yao said, because you always turn people's love into chains. The projection laughed once. Then keep taking it apart. Next time, it will not only be a letter. It will be an entire system. The projected sister dispersed. The cold light page also began to collapse. But before it disappeared completely, Lin Yao used the responsibility register to seal one segment of data. Medical Assistance Qualification Page Fragment. Contains suspected real-world medical data synchronization projection. Requires real-world verification as to whether Zhou Mian's sister's medical assistance has been contaminated by the correction process. Zhou Mian sat weakly on the ground, still trembling all over. Lin Yao did not immediately make her stand. He placed echo wooden tablets before her. You wanting to save your sister is not wrong. The correction thread is not your responsibility. Stop first. Zhou Mian looked at the wooden tablets and finally cried out loud. This time, the crying was not collapse. It was the sound of withdrawing from the echo. Zhao Tai turned away and cursed something very ugly. Su Fang's eyes were red as well. Lin Yao looked at the collapsing cold light and knew that although Luo Wence had failed this time, he had also left behind a new direction. Medical assistance. Qualification systems. Real-world subsidies. If those things were also connected to the correction process, how many people would be forced to become willing? Zhou Mian was not a special case. She was only the first one they had managed to save.